Okay. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Mindgasms podcast. So, I'm talking to Scott Perry today, also also perhaps known as the Stoic Creative, who is a Stoic and a musician, and he has a group for centering around Stoicism for artists. And yeah, why don't you just tell everyone a little bit about yourself there, Scott?
Sure. So I'm living right now in Floyd, Virginia, which is in the southwest corner of the state. It's where I've been for the last 20 years. Raised two boys on a farm nearby, sold the farm, and live in town now. Been a full-time musician all my adult life. I currently make most of my living as a guitar teacher, but I still perform quite a bit. And I am most recently the founder of Creative on Purpose, which is the outgrowth of a project that I unpacked in a program called the Alt MBA, which is a program by Seth Godin. That was called the Stoic Guitarist. And the Stoic Guitarist morphed into the Stoic Creative, and the Stoic Creative morphed into Creative on Purpose. But everything about what I do in this endeavor really is informed by my longtime love and study of Stoic philosophy and my longtime career as a musician and just a creative in general.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I totally forgot that the name had changed, even though I saw one of your emails yesterday.
It's fine. It's been hard to keep up with.
Yeah. Yeah. So, that's really cool that you've been a musician for so long. I wanted to talk about creativity for one reason because I'm also a very creative person. My preferred creative form of expression is writing. I write a blog about ideas, and I write poems and short stories and essays for contests, and I'm also releasing chapters of a novel that I wrote gradually on my blog. So that's something that we have in common, the love of creative expression. And I also actually just got back into learning guitar. I had learned it a while ago, but kind of just fell out of practice. So I just got back into it recently, and it's so interesting, like getting my fingers back used to
Right.
like moving that way and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, I think that's congratulations on all of your artistic pursuits and all the things that you got going on. I think it's you know my the melding of these two interests of mine occurred fairly recently. I have been a musician, a professional musician, for over 30 years, and primarily as a blues guitar player, but also more recently as a jazz guitarist. But also, I teach everything. I teach country and I teach rock, and I love just good music. But one of the things that I found uh, about 10 years ago, just recognized that I was becoming one of those jaded, bitter, whining, pain in the butts that sometimes happens when people have been in the music business for a long time, because you feel like, oh well, I'm not getting the breaks and I'm not getting the kind of gigs I deserve and nobody's paying attention. And it was just, I was falling into all the kind of mindset and behaviors that I had always promised myself I never would fall into. And when I revisited the meditations of Marcus Aurelius, it reminded me of that it's important that you do things with a purpose, and that you do things in alignment with both your values and your virtue, and your talents, but in service to others. That our job is to enhance our lives through enhancing the lives of others. And it really flipped a switch for me. I suddenly remembered that being a musician was not the work I had to do, it was the work I get to do. And when I approached it as a gift that I had been bestowed with, that it was an opportunity for me to express myself and to do work that I really cared about, and to share something that I had been working on for a long time with other people. Then it cultivated that sense of gratitude that you see in Marcus Aurelius's open chapters of Meditations, where he just spends an entire chapter thanking family, friends, teachers, people that were mentors and influencers in his life. And it really brought back the joy in making music. And that was kind of where the seed of Creative on Purpose and the Stoic Creative and the Stoic Guitarist came. Was just like, oh, I can show others how this ancient wisdom can inform and influence and help cultivate joy within a endeavor, any creative endeavor, but music in my case. That's rigorous. That's hard. That comes with a lot of challenges, where you will face a lot of disappointment and misfortune, where you will be largely ignored. And you can face all that with equanimity and tranquility, and actually flourish through those challenges, and just keep your eyes on the prize in terms of what's important, what's you know and I feel like what's important is the reasons that we do what we do, and to focus less on the results of what we do. A lot of times musicians, all you have to do is turn on American Idol. Not that I do that, but those are people that are chasing results. And when you see a career that unfolds that way, you see a lot of disappointment, and you see a lot of unhappiness, and you see a lot of suffering, because they've attached themselves to outcomes that are beyond their control and that are not virtues within themselves. And so because they are not feeding or cultivating or enhancing their virtue, it's never enough. So fame and fortune may very well be the result of doing work done for good reasons, but it's not a very good reason to be pursuing anything.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Very well said. Yeah, like the if you truly want to be like a lifelong artist and enjoy yourself, that and not have unnecessary suffering like you were talking about, you really have to enjoy the creative process and not be so concerned with the results, because like you were saying, it's a very alternative career path. So you have to be like, it has to be something you enjoy, basically, for you to be able to not just feel like you're wasting your life or something like that. And yeah, like in terms of stoicism too, it's really like a good alternative to like pessimistic nihilism or something like that too, like you were kind of alluding to there as well. That's one of the main things that I've gotten out of it too. Um, I was telling Bill Furiolo when I talked to him before on my channel that that was that was one of the things that I got out of it, because I to make a long story short, I was raised as a Christian with by parents who were ministers, and then eventually I gradually became like an agnostic, and then gradually became an atheist. And I went through like a short period of time where I just had this kind of nihilistic mindset, like, doesn't matter, nothing matters, why even bother trying or anything like that. And one of the main things that helped me find like an alternative philosophy is stoicism. Like, find your purpose, whatever it may be. And if you have that sort of higher purpose or something like that, whatever gives your life meaning, it can give you joy, and it can help you. It can, like I said, you can find meaning in life better that way, and not be so pessimistic and despair so much and stuff like that. And yeah, I was telling Bill when I talked to him too, that I think I would have to say I definitely love Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, but I would say that my favorite Stoic book that I've read so far is probably The Art of Living by Epictetus, because I love those parables, like what Seneca goes into too. But I really like like the straightforward nature of the instructions of Epictetus too.
Yeah, well, Epictetus is definitely direct, and he's the only Stoic that was actually a teacher. Well, the only Stoic that whose work we have that was actually a teacher. We have some fragments from Musonius Rufus, and I think that he was probably a teacher as well. But I mean, Epictetus, we have, two books that are pretty comprehensive, coherent statements, of what it must have been like to sit at this guy's, feet and or to be engaged in learning from him. And he's got a wicked sense of humor, and he's kind of a little bit of a curmudgeon, and he's very direct and kind of darkly humorous. I and I love Epictetus too, and I haven't read everything of Seneca's, but I've read enough to see that there's a lot there and an entirely different approach. There's a man that's firmly in the world and, still trying to maintain, a sense of humility and purpose and, recognize that in the context of the enormity of the cosmos and even the enormity of his society, that he is just, a cog in this great mechanism. Marcus is very, number one, his language is beautiful. The thing that struck me about Marcus, I was introduced to him in the seventh grade in my seventh grade Latin class by my Latin professor, and I loved translating those so much that I would ask for extra homework, and he gave me his copy of Meditations. And when I read that, as however old you are in the seventh grade, I just remember feeling like, oh, this guy is talking to himself like just the way I do. And the other thing about Stoicism and Marcus's work in particular is he talks a lot about purpose. He talks about how, never mind what a good man should be one. He says even the smallest thing should be done with a purpose. And Stoicism is very much a philosophy about that. The reason why I think Stoicism endures and is in the midst of yet another revival today is that, during the Hellenistic period, there's cynicism, which Stoicism comes from. There's skepticism, there's Epicureanism, and there's, of course, all sorts of other things going on. And a lot of them can be put under the umbrella of eudaimonic philosophies. They are all trying to define and provide practices and principles for human flourishing, for living the good life, for developing your capacity as a human being. So they're all answering this basic question: what does it mean to be human? What does it mean to be happy? How can I be more of both? What Stoicism is founded on, two basic principles. The first is that we're inherently rational, and the second is that we're inherently social. And it turns out that now that we have science and biology and all these other stuff, that it actually turns out that we survived as a species because of our ability to come together, which caused us to create language, which made our brains bigger and developed our creative and rational capacity. And not only did we survive, but now we dominate the planet. So those two things it gets right. And then on top of that, it says that the purpose, that all that is required and sufficient for living a good life is virtue. So all you have to do is cultivate the content of your character, and you will live a good life despite whatever situation or circumstances you live in. So you have Epictetus, who begins his life as a slave, is injured by his master, is eventually freed, becomes one of the greatest teachers in history. And then you have at the other end of the spectrum Marcus Aurelius, who is the emperor of the biggest empire of the time, and the most powerful man on the planet. So it's a beautiful philosophy that serves the needs really of everyone. Musonius Rufus also kind of included women as part of as equals, which is another really fascinating element of Stoicism. And so this, just this idea that personal development, that tapping into and cultivating your promise and your potential as a human being as a path to flourishing, um, is fascinating. And when you kind of impose that or plug that into work that matters, whether it's work as a musician, work as a writer, work as a parent, as a spouse, as a son, as whatever it is, um, it becomes this kind of infinite game. You just the goal is not to win. The goal is to just continue playing, because there is no ultimate end. Every time you take another path towards sagehood, you've destroyed the old you, and now you're a new you, but you're really just setting yourself up for destroying that so that you can become the next best version of you. And it's Stoicism obviously has an association with keeping a stiff upper lip and kind of grim, determined effort in the face of adversity and all that, which is unfortunate, because really it is a joyful, hopeful, optimistic, and highly engaged process for thriving in life.
Yeah, very well said. Yeah, people who don't understand this philosophy seem to think that it's like about, ignoring your emotions and just being this cold, emotionless, like Spock-like character, but that's not really what it's about. It's about like, experiencing your emotions and then just not letting them control you and not being attached to your past experiences and moving on, like just moving on with your fucking day without like getting attached to, spilling coffee on yourself and not letting it ruin your day or, something worse like that. And yeah, I haven't explored any of the work of Rufus yet, so I didn't know I wasn't aware of what you said about women there. I should look into him
Yeah,
too.
he's
And
the fragments that are available, that we know about, are all available online. And I've not read them in toto, but I've just for articles and things that I've written, I've done enough research to call him kind of like a proto-feminist. I mean, he is amongst the earliest thinkers to say, hey, actually, we're all equals. You touched on something that I think is really worth just sticking a pin in, and that's this idea of mindfulness, because a lot of times people think, we'll go to Buddhism or kind of Eastern mindful practices because they feel like that's those practices will help us get over our attachments and help us be in the here and now and cultivate presence and mindfulness and all that. Stoicism is very much a philosophy about mindfulness. That the Romans would say, be in the hic et nunc, meaning be in the here and now. And the Stoics would say, and it's baked into the writing of Marcus Aurelius. He's not concerned about his legacy. He reminds himself constantly, Alexander and his mule skinner are buried in the same ground. All these great men and all these great events and all these great buildings and what have you will be forgotten, over time, and it will kind of matter not. And so and at the same time, we can't go back and change the past, and we can't change our situation or circumstances much of the time. So to kind of be in the here and now with all the prejudices and predispositions that come from our past experience and observation, or to be focused on wants, needs, and desires that are in the future that we can't control, it's just nonsense, and it's just a path for suffering. If all you have is this moment, and what your job is to be the best human being and to do what you can for yourself and for others in this moment. And that's the other element of Marcus's work that that I love so much, is he's constantly reminding himself that even those that we disagree with, or who are disagreeable, or even who intend and cause us harm, are to be looked upon as brothers and sisters. And I can't remember the exact quote, but he says something along the lines of, those who you can teach, those who you can't endure, that we are members of this community, regardless of whether or not, we are friend or foe, and better to, do your best to help kind of elevate the entire society and enhance the life of everybody, rather than, punish um, or even marginalize other people. I mean, it's a very inclusive philosophy, and very much about the here and now. I just want to put in a quick, so in terms of like tying all this back to creativity, because we haven't really talked about that that much yet. The book, The Stoic Creative, is on Amazon as an ebook. It's also, you can go to becreativeonpurpose.com and download a PDF copy if you don't have an ebook reading device. It's built on the assumption that, or the assertion that, struggling creatives are driven by passion, and thriving artists are driven by purpose. And so it's a book that really is, brings in all these ideas that I steal from Stoic philosophy, steal with credit. But it also helps deliver a process for helping people dial in their purpose. And that process is pretty simple. It's determine your values, the guiding principles, the things that, inform all of your decisions and actions, your core talents, which are the things that you're really good at, not the things you learned in school or were trained on in the job, but the interpersonal skills that you've been practicing all your life. And then to find an audience of collaborators and people that you seek to serve, who align with your values and who need your talents to enhance their lives. And when you get to the groovy spot that's in the middle of that Venn diagram, you have found work that you can do now that will enhance your life and enhance the life of others.
That sounds like very good Stoic style practical advice. Yeah, send me the link for your book and I'll add it to the description for this video too.
Sure.
And yeah, I like that. I like that aspect of forgiveness of Marcus Aurelius, and like you trying to treat people with respect, even if you vehemently disagree with them. I've like tried to integrate that into the way I interact with people a lot more, especially more recently too. And it really helps you like learn more and understand different perspectives when you just like keep a really open mind about it. And yeah, the what you said about integrating like pursuing purpose and finding a group of collaborators for artists is good advice too. And yeah, to go back to what you were saying about Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus, it is really interesting what you said, that contrast between them. Like Marcus Aurelius was the emperor of Rome, yet he was so phenomenally humble, and Epictetus was a freed slave, and they both understood the utility of Stoicism. And yeah, it's obviously really useful for artists too. And this idea of self-improvement obviously is present in lots of different types of philosophies. Like I'm not sure if you're aware, maybe you are, of Jordan Peterson, who's become like really famous lately, and one of his main principles is basically live by example and self-improvement, and improve the world by improving yourself and being like basically being a virtuous person, and help it and inspiring others through your example, because that's the best way that you can improve the world.
Yeah, well, so one of the things that you endure in a musician's life is, when you form bands, you have to deal with all the vagaries of human relationships and all the challenges that come with that. And when you're dealing with musicians, there is a so musicians can have a reputation as being emotional and passionate and maybe a little bit egotistical and hubristic. And so you have all these things that, there are elements of truth in all of this. And so one of the things that many lessons that I learned that kind of go back to my love of philosophy is, your first instinct when you're putting together a band is, let's get the best players we can possibly get. Well, the problem with getting all the best players that you can possibly get is probably are going to collect a fair number of large egos as well, and a lot of people that are more interested in promoting themselves than doing good work or promoting the work itself. So I always say, serve the song, don't make the song serve you. And with selecting bandmates, what I found was, the best musician on the planet who is not a good person, it's going to be very difficult to turn him or her into a good person. But if you hire a good person who is not a great musician, you can teach them to become a great musician over time. And so I went from this idea of always trying to hire the most talented or the most experienced players to instead hiring the ones that I knew were good people that I could actually afford, could stand to be around for long stretches of time, because you spend a lot of time with these people, especially if you're, all shoved in a band together going from town to town. Better to concentrate on the character thing. And then, like you kind of were saying, to lead by example. I mean, you can't insist that other people be good and selfless and, that they help elevate your voice on the bandstand if you are constantly, seeking to be the center of attention. So it's, one of the great things about being on a bandstand is that it's like the ultimate democratic dance. You are up there to do your best to express yourself, to execute your freedom to express yourself. At the very same time, you can only do that insofar as it allows everybody else to do the very same thing. So, there's limits on all that if it's going to be done well and if it's going to last. So, there's just one of the lessons that came from thinking about this thing in the context of deeper philosophical ideas.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. And yeah, one of the great things that we can get from Stoicism and similar philosophy, in terms of the living by example thing, is like, it's a good contrast to what we see with the common behavior in our social media age now. Like, people tend to, like, on Twitter and everything like that, be really quick to harshly criticize the shit out of everyone, but if you look at their profiles, that's pretty much like all that they do. They just spend their whole day like shitting on people, and they're probably pretty miserable people and are not that good at living by example.
Yeah, well, that's in the Stoic creative. I spend the first half of the book kind of sharing what I call basic principles or core concepts, and they're all set up as assertions that are kind of versus statements. So one of them, for instance, is creative versus artist, and I make the case that we're all creative, and I mean that's a statement that most people would argue with, because polls and studies show that less than half of the people on the planet see themselves as creative people. But creatives are simply people that bring stuff into the world that didn't exist before. So, a conversation is an act of creation. Making a sandwich is an act of creation. A pot of tea, a cup of coffee, making a mess, cleaning it up. I mean, these are all things that are creative acts. But artistry, or creativity rises to artistry when we put in when we start to think more deeply about the motivation and the intention of what we're creating. But the most important thing about difference, I think, between art and creativity is art is done in public. Art is done for the purpose of causing change. Art that's done well is done for a specific audience and seeks to create a transformation. It seeks to change things. Now, that means that all art is a creative endeavor, but not all creative endeavors are art. And obviously there's kind of a spectrum there. Well, what happens when you start putting your stuff out in public, when you say, hey, I made this, I made it for you. What do you think? And you were just alluding to this on social media. There's no shortage of people that are willing to give you their firm opinions about what they think about what you do, say, and create. So I further distinguish between feedback and criticism. Feedback is something that artists should seek. It's something that you seek from people that you know, that you trust, that you respect, and who know, trust, love, and respect you, and have your best interests at heart. They want you to become better at your craft. And so they give you sometimes critical feedback, but always delivered with a little bit of love and with the intent of helping you improve. Critics, on the other hand, especially in the online world, are often anonymous. They have no desire to help elevate your craft. They seek to elevate themselves by putting you down. And so one of the hardest things, and one of the things that I think will stunt any creative's growth or rise to artistry is, we think what we're doing is for everyone, and so we pay attention to everyone. And I think that that's really dangerous. I think that you should pay attention to very, very few people. You should have a very clear idea about who your art really is for, and you should really only be paying attention to those people. And you should definitely ignore any uninvited criticism, because it's not being delivered with any good purpose in mind. It's purely for the benefit of the person delivering the criticism, and not of any benefit intended towards yourself. Now, obviously, as you get better and develop, I wouldn't even call it thicker skin, just as you gather wisdom about weighing the difference between what is useful and what is unuseful feedback and criticism, sometimes some piece of anonymous criticism there might be something there worth looking at. But in the beginning, just shun the critics. Find your tribe, find your people, find your audience, listen to them, love them, generously share as much as you can with them, and just keep developing your craft and delivering better art. And then you're on the path to flourishing as an artist, but you're also on the path to developing your potential and serving your purpose. And we started off talking about passion not being a very good reason to get into artistic endeavors. The funny thing is that passion, like fame and fortune that we were talking about earlier, is a likely result of doing purposeful creation. Passion comes, and more purpose comes, by being really intentional about doing the work that you're doing. And so you can do that as a guitar player, as a writer, as a parent, as a chef, as a friend, in just about any endeavor or enterprise that matters. You can treat it as craft. You can rise to artistry in the work that you do.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that was very eloquent. Yeah. Um, yeah, like there is I definitely think it is true that even in like the really harsh anonymous criticisms, there really can sometimes be like a nugget of constructive criticism. Sometimes they make good points. But yeah, focusing on just like a small amount of people is really good advice too. It reminds me of the notion of 1,000 true fans that Tim Ferriss talks about, who, like many people, he was the first person I heard about Stoicism from. And it's a really good idea, because if you try to please everyone, you're gonna please very few people, because like like you can't like there's no such thing as art that pleases everyone, because art is very personal and subjective. So there are inevitably going to be people who don't like what you do. So you should try to follow the type of art that you seem to pursue once you figure out what your style is, and then just try to appeal to people who are interested in that kind of art, I think. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, well, so Tim Ferriss gets that idea of the thousand true fans from Kevin Kelly, and you can get
I
online
thought he had gotten it from someone else.
yeah,
Yeah.
you can get, there's a little 3-page manifesto that Kevin Kelly wrote that's really worth looking at. But so the idea is, if 1,000 people, 1,000 true fans are willing to spend $100 on you a year, that's a good living. And so obviously, if you're in a band, the numbers need to, go up and down depending on your needs and the size of your group. But I think, yeah, and I love that concept. And it's a good reminder that if your art is for everybody, it's actually for nobody. Pursue this idea of the thousand true fans. I would just say that Seth Godin has a blog post on the first 10, and that to me is the better place to start. Find, if you can't find 10 people that want to engage with what you're doing, you either need to find new people, or you need to find a new craft, because there's something wrong. And what the object is to get 10 people who are going to tell 10 people. That's how you scale up to that 1,000 true fans.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Like um I still don't have that many fans, but I would say I have at least 10, and it seems like I'm starting to gradually get more fans as I produce more creative work and kind of just try to fit. I'm always like trying to find my style too, which kind of is a thing about being an artist. I think you're always like trying to just find your style, and then sometimes it changes, and sometimes you experiment with different things. But people seem to tend to be attracted to you because they're aware. So sometimes they can even perhaps be more aware of your style than you are. Like for me, maybe like the style that I write, regardless of what I'm writing about, and maybe for you, just the way that you play guitar, regardless of what type of music you're playing or something like that.
Yeah, so I'm going to have to jump off here, but I
Okay.
mean, that's an excellent point. And so, if you think about an artist like Bob Dylan's not making the same kind of music that he made when he started. And he's gone through a series of there's Bob Dylan trying to be Woody Guthrie and Ramblin' Jack Elliott. Then there's Bob Dylan, going electric. And then there's Bob Dylan going gospel. And then there's Bob Dylan, so he keeps developing and challenging himself and finding new edges to explore. And not everybody is going to follow him everywhere, but there are still people that were with Bob when he was the little folky in Greenwich Village that are with him now, even as he's recording, standard jazz and croaking out, Christmas tunes, because he's taking them on a journey. And if folks want to go to Creative on Purpose, one of the things that I try really hard to do is to just take care of the people I already have. I don't have a humongous mailing list. There's about I'm on my way to like 900 members on the site, but twice a week I connect first at the beginning of the week with a little insight or inspiration and a question to help people, just fly a little higher at the beginning of the week. And then at the end of the week on a Friday, I deliver a little dose of ancient wisdom, a little quote or something that has helped me, helped inspire me or encourage me to to do better and to do more and to, be more generous and more grateful. And, that's speaking to what you were just saying, take care of what you have and everything else kind of takes care of itself.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I know you need to get going there. So I'll just say what I like to usually say at the end of all of my videos, and then I'll just you can give your plugs for your website and your book there, and send me those links too, and I'll add them to the description for this video.
Very
Uh,
good.
all right. So thanks everyone for watching another episode of the Mindgasms podcast, and I love you all, and always, um, always remember. Oh yeah, always try to be. Oh, sorry, I keep saying I'm tired. I usually say this the same way.
No
Keeping
worries.
keeping the tiny beam of light that shines through the almost impenetrable darkness in the universe. And thank you everyone so much, to everyone who's already subscribed to my channel, and to everyone who's become my patron on Patreon, and to anyone else who subscribes to my channel and becomes my patron on Patreon. Thank you so much. You have no idea how much I appreciate that. And also, most importantly, always remember this: the funk cures all. All right, so you want to give any plugs there,
Yeah.
Scott?
So first I want to give a plug to you, Andrew. This is very generous, and I can really get a sense of the purpose and the passion that you're putting into this project. And it's just, this is what fires me up, that we live in this age where anybody can have a TV show, anybody can have a podcast, anybody can write a book, anybody can have a magazine, anybody can, become a graphic artist. But very few are doing it in a way that's as generous and with the intent of help and service that you are. So thank you for the work that you're doing and for the opportunity for me to come up and
Thank
speak
you.
to your audience.
Thank you
Uh,
very much for the compliments, and I'd
of
love to
course.
talk to you again too. Yeah.
Absolutely. Would love
Yeah.
to. So you can connect with me at Creative on Purpose. I hope you'll sign up for the email newsletter. Comes out twice a week with another third midweek, just to remind you about things that are coming up, like my broadcast and podcast, and the guests that are going to be on. If you're interested in exploring the ideas that we talked a little bit about with Andrew today, go to Amazon and just type in The Stoic Creative and or Scott Perry, and that book will show up. And just I think I'll end with what you just said about the beam of light in the darkness. Reminds me of a Marcus Aurelius quote that I wish I could bring to mind, but I'll just share one last bit of inspiration from Marcus, who's my main man, and that is to love the humble art that you have learned and take rest in it.
Awesome. It's a great way to end it. All right. Thanks for watching. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. And adios until next time.
Appreciate it, Andrew. Thank you.